Welcome to the Ailm Practice Education Series in partnership with Firm Media, delivering concise and impactful insights for aesthetic and specialty medical practices. Your host, Chris Solhonik.
Today we have a very special guest, Head of Medical Aesthetics and Plastic Surgery, Judy Kozlicki from Skytale Group. Judy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Chris.
On this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about how you help practices unlock growth opportunities. You have been in the industry for a very long time. I said to you earlier that you are clearly a thought leader in this, and I'm super excited to have this conversation with you. Judy, can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and how you ended up where you're at today?
Sure. Thank you again, Chris, for having me on the show. And it really is a pleasure to have a conversation with you. I've known you for quite a long time, and just to reconnect like this feels really good. So as many of you know, or maybe your listeners know or don't know, I've actually been in medical aesthetics as an industry, call it, or this space for going on 18 years now. Mm-hmm. And I did start in just a single location medical spa. That med spa happened to be acquired in 2010. So we were acquired or sold to a large corporation, and I wound up actually spearheading a growth and scale on a national capacity or scale. We ended up going from one location to 33 in the 5 years that I was there. And I really had a very unique opportunity personally and professionally to be in charge of that national expansion. Obviously, I had leaders above me in the executive level, but they really gave me full reins to help grow and scale and launch, many of which those locations were de novo or brand new locations. And then we had 6 additional acquisitions. So being part of an implementation or integration team for other acquisitions was really also unique and special. After that time, I was kind of recruited away by a cosmetic or plastic surgeon that also wanted to grow and scale. They're like, I see what you're doing. I want to scale my practice. And it was a great opportunity for me at the right time.
Sure.
And so I did then kind of venture into the plastic surgery world. And I worked with 3 different practices in the latter part of my career, in which just helping them, again, optimize their businesses, but potentially grow and scale. And the last practice that I was with, which is here in the Twin Cities, which is where I am from, born and raised in Minnesota. Sorry, I did that little accent sneaks out when I say Minnesota.
I think the accent sneaks out when anyone says Minnesota.
It is what it is. I've learned to live with it. Yeah. At any rate, that practice really grew exponentially, and many of you experienced similar growth during the pandemic time or post-pandemic, right? So we boasted a CAGR of 32% year over year, and that practice ended up going to market and selling as well. So I was part of another kind of acquisition opportunity. But how I ended up here today, so I'm a consultant at Skytale Group, and I do head, like you said, the aesthetics and plastic surgery, all of our clients in that category. I actually, about 2021, I looked back, I was invited to speak with another very big thought leader in the healthcare consulting space. Her name is Karen Zupko. And that invitation sort of opened this door for me that, opened my eyes to an opportunity to be able to reach a broader audience. And then she also gave me the opportunity to kind of start consulting with her on a part-time basis, which I did. So I got to dip my toes in consulting just to see if, after all these years of all the knowledge I've kind of learned and experienced, that I could, shed that light or help other practices grow and scale. And it was almost 2 years today, or 2 years ago, that I joined Skytale Group full-time consulting. So it took that leap. And that also stemmed from, again, someone Sure. So a mutual colleague that I knew in the industry who also knew of Skytale and Ben Hernandez, and they were growing by leaps and bounds in the aesthetic space and really wanted somebody with the kind of boots on the ground operational experience that I have to help lead the consulting side for the aesthetics practice. So that's where I am, and I love it. And it's really been a great fit for me to be a consulting now.
It's absolutely a perfect role for you. I'm so glad that you're in that space because it's led to us making even more connections. You and I have had the pleasure of Firm Media being the sort of marketing partner of choice for most of the practices that you worked with. We still get to work on some stuff together, which I think is really great. But I also think it's interesting how one thing leads to another, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was in the music business for almost a decade, and I had traditional marketing experience just right around the birth of the internet. And during the dot-com boom, I happened to go to work for the two gentlemen who owned the domain names plasticsurgery.com and cosmeticsurgery.com. So pre-internet days, pre-Google days, not pre-internet, but pre-website days, pre-Google days, pre-blogs, pre-social media. I was flying around the country meeting with 750 plastic surgeons all over the country. And it literally gave me a bird's eye view of how to do marketing for aesthetics that I think is priceless. And I don't know that other people got to have that experience, which I only want to do things that are great. You only want to do things that are great. I really like working with people that want to do great things. So I'm glad you're on the show today. So the format of the show, I ask 3 questions. We sort of explore the answers to those questions. The reason or logic behind the questions is so that we can bring out information that you have that maybe most other people or even nobody else has in the industry because of your unique experience. The hope or the want is that our listeners with specialty medical practices, so that is aesthetics, that's med spas, but that's also oral surgeons and periodontists and some of our other clients, which Firm Media has a stake in as well. So we try to create information that's good for everyone to be able to take back to their practice, apply what they can to sort of make what they're doing just a little bit more successful and help them hopefully meet their personal goals or revenue goals. And just by listening to the show, maybe help out with that. So you ready?
Sure.
Okay. So the first question I have, you've worked with practices of all sizes, from solo plastic surgery offices to national med spa operations. What's the biggest difference in how you approach consulting these different practices?
So, Chris, I'd actually like to start with what's similar first, and I will give you some differences too, but I think what's similar overwhelmingly and with all the practices that I deal with, and this is across all of the type of verticals you mentioned, is really, this is a relationship business. Anytime that you are in more of a cash-based business, right? It's not a need, it's more of a want. You are building relationships in order to take care of your patients and retain your patients. The same is true about your employees. So you will probably hear me mention focus on your team, your team, your team many times throughout this interview, just because I am very much an advocate for taking care of your people. Because when you have happy employees, you have happy patients. It reflects on down. And so what I find practices struggle with is really wearing sometimes that HR hat to manage their people or build the culture in a way that, creates a kind of energy and positive transparency and growth, that we're all rowing the boat in the same direction and not going off in tangents. So I think people, taking care of your people is a commonality. Another common element to most practices like this is that owners, in our case in medical field, they're doctors, they're surgeons, they're PAs or NPs. They've gone to medical school and they don't necessarily attend any type of business school or have any business courses. So
Business or
there's always, that experience and just knowledge base. And so in all the practices that I've led, I've been that business side, right? Watching the P&L, pulling the reports, pulling the data to give us metrics that help us actually move the needle. And as a consultant, that is one of our major focuses is trying to help people understand their financials, get good visibility on them, clean them up if needed, and really look at operationally what are the things that we can do to improve efficiencies, et cetera, across the board. So we know that most practices need to think a little bit more about streamlining processes and systems. And that's not a fun thing either, right? Just
Sure.
to think about, I need an SOP for this. What?
A playbook or an SOP. It's not why we went into business, right?
Right. No, and nobody wants to spend time getting into that detail. We've been fortunate in medical aesthetics that, right, this whole space has just blossomed and continues to grow year after year. It's one of the highest growth rate of verticals in healthcare and continues to be. So we're all very, very fortunate. But sometimes we grow despite ourselves. And then we get into a place where we're like, okay, I really don't have any clue how my business is really doing on the bottom line profitability. So again, that's a commonality. The other thing in this industry, because it's a little less consolidated or it's less mature than some of our other healthcare spaces, is that we have a multitude, I should say, of technology resources.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very overwhelming, whether that's your practice management system or your CRM or any kind of software technology that will help you optimize your practice. There are so many choices. It's really hard to choose. So lastly, I'd say a similarity is most often our practices are very confused on marketing. They do not know how to market their business, and they feel like marketing is, and I would agree in many ways, that sometimes feels like a whole different language. Wait, I have to learn this new language that I may not have time for, just like I don't have time to learn what goes into my profit and loss or what should be in there.
Sure.
And so marketing is a big kind of gap, and that I find overwhelmingly people struggle with.
Sure. Before we jump into the
go ahead.
differences, I just wanted to share some information with you. I've done several episodes of the Ailm I've done several episodes of the Ailm Practice Education Series with some other thought leaders from either the same industry or others. I've had Jamie Leos from OMS Powerhouse Consulting talk, and she refers to how much happy team members impact the revenue cycle in an OMS practice. And what that really boils down to is our leads closing when they're contacting the practice, right? Last week, I had Isaac Muesli on the show, and he was basically saying the exact same thing. You're happy. We're in the relationship business, and that's being echoed over and over. The other thing I think is interesting is, and I don't know if you agree with this or not, there's been a hyper jump in sort of awareness and sophistication in the industry. I'm noticing that people like you and I are connecting for we've known each other for a long time, but we're connecting at a different level for a different reason. And I think that's because the practices themselves are now starting to separate out between the ones that sort of want to bury their head in the sand, and the other ones that really want to know the answers and have now decided, when I decided to become a plastic surgeon, I decided to be a business owner, and I need to run this thing like a business. And that's making marketing so fun again, because now we're focusing on top line revenue drivers. We know that Botox isn't going to, your lasers are profitable, your injectables aren't. So now we can stop having unnecessary conversations. It's so great. So I just wanted to share that what you're saying is echoing something that's reverberating through the industry in a way that I think is it's fun for me to be a part of it on this show.
Yeah, absolutely.
So differentiators,
yes. I'd say in my experience, because I've worked, again, in this vertical for a long time, if I'm comparing med spas to plastic surgery practices, the most common practices are still today a solo plastic surgery practice. And the biggest difference is that in that environment, we have what we call a big key man risk, meaning I am one surgeon and I make up the lion's share, let's call it even 80, 90%, maybe in some cases, if it's just a surgical practice, 100% of the revenue here. And or if I have a portion of my business that is a medical spa, but I'm still the main revenue producer, if I get hit by a bus, like that revenue is gone. What happens to my business? What happens to this practice? And in medical spas, there is a big difference, right? Because we can have multiple providers. We also have a lot more recurring revenue because of the repeatable services. And so just that in and of itself is a big differentiator in how we manage the actual business and how we help them grow and focus. That, as you can imagine, also really directs their brand development. So if you think about those solo plastic surgery practices, how many are named after the person, after the surgeon?
Sure.
And if you are going to grow and scale, of course, that name doesn't necessarily translate to your associate who's going to take over down the road, or as you know, grow and scale location 2, 3, 4 with your med spa. So just branding and marketing, again, I think is very, very different across those different types of practices and the sizes of them.
Sure. Something that a lot of the oral surgery practices have gotten right. They, right out of the gate, refer to themselves as, NYOMS or Dental Implant Center of such and such. I recently wrote an article, I think I sent it to you, right? About,
Yes.
It was the trust versus value article, but in there's a whole section about how when we started working with oral surgeons, they did not lay off of traditional marketing, and their digital marketing there's a fundamentally different experience of brand recognition in the region because they continue to do traditional marketing and were late adopters to digital marketing, where plastic surgeons kind of at one level almost went exclusively digital, and it's just not the way. I mean, my most recent article that I wrote was called "SEO is not a marketing strategy," which I don't think I've sent you, but I'll send that to you. It's right along the same lines. There's more to do, right?
Right. And if you think about too, the consolidation that's going on, when you have a multi-site kind of practice, your branding as well as your patient experience, as well as all your SOPs, that everything has to be kept in line and telling the same message. We can't have a different experience in Kentucky versus Minneapolis, or et cetera. Like, we want, brand is very important, and that patient experience. Whereas surgeons, on the other hand, plastic surgeons in particular, are very individual, and rightly so. Like, they hone their craft in a way that's meaningful to them and
Sure.
to their practice. And so it's very hard sometimes to replicate what is one person's vision and then build that out. So again, just some big differences that I see.
My next question, in your role at Skytale, you work closely with practices. I'm assuming that part of your role with them is to try to make them more profitable?
Absolutely.
So what are some of the key things you see popping up when that happens? And what are some of the key areas of opportunity?
Well, here I go. Number one, I would say the biggest thing that you can do to grow your business and become more profitable ultimately is focus on your team. You have to build a culture in which your team feels that they're part of the overall vision. So that means having transparency about what your goals are as an owner, but also how they contribute to the goal, again, so that they feel part of that plan. And, having that full transparency, having a great culture means you'll have higher employee retention. If I go back to that similarities, what is everybody stressing about in particular since post-pandemic, right? How we lost so many people in home. Employee retention is just top of mind. And in the med spa industry in particular, it's very, very prevalent, a lot of jumping. So, focusing on your culture and employee retention is just number one, because ultimately that translates down to your patient experience, maintaining them, being able to grow, try new things, show them new procedures, etc. The second thing that I would say is a key driver that not many people really spend enough time on, and that is diligent lead management. So we think about marketing. We think we know we have to do something and get out there, whether that's in social media and through meta ads or obviously optimize our website and do all the things that we need to do. But what are we doing? Like, we're doing it to generate a lead.
Sure.
And a lead is only as good as the person who's handling it, meaning answering the phone or responding to the lead. And so if you're not taking time with those people to, really fully, completely train them well to do that, but also to support and to be looking at the data and how you're actually converting. I personally, that was one of the things as COO or executive director of a practice. It wasn't my business. I've never been the owner.
Sure.
But I treat the owner's money like my own, and I never wanted to spend that money blindly. And so, yes, invest in marketing, but also invest in your lead management. So that's a big one that, to me, every single lead, that's gold. That's a potential opportunity.
So there's a history or a sort of a progression of a way to look at that I've been involved in the business from the very beginning. So early on, it was lead generation. So how many leads, how many visits can you get to my website, and how many leads can I get? Then it was speed to lead. If you don't get to that lead very fast, it's going to be dead because they've emailed 3 different practices. So it's within 20 minutes, it's dead. Realistically, within 5 minutes, it's dead. The first person to respond got them in the seat for a consult. You lost your opportunity. And now it's lead exhaustion, right? It's making sure that person contacted your practice. You spent X amount of dollars to get them to click that Google PPC ad or that social ad. And now you need to work that. Where we're still not having the conversation is the person at the front desk is a salesperson, and we have not said that out loud. The practice is not yet saying that out loud. But if you're not investing in some sales training, you're spending a lot of money on marketing for nothing.
Yeah,
right?
1,000%. Yeah, 1,000%.
I've been doing a lot of writing about that and a lot of conversations about that. You did say something like a few seconds ago or maybe a minute ago about employees or team members jumping from med spas. And I know what that means. I just wanted to explore that a little bit with you. I'm getting ready to do an episode on with doctors and laser techs who got formally trained but didn't realize they had to become social influencers to be good at what they're doing. And I think once they become social influencers, then they become more pop, right? Like I want to talk about that a little bit with you because I think it's a really interesting subject and people don't really realize what's behind that.
Well, the first part, you triggered something. I've been thinking about this personally. Because I've been in the industry so long, there has been a truly significant seismic shift in what you just said, which is I don't have to just train to be a laser technician or an injector or an esthetician. I now have to be good on camera, speaking or creating content that's
my own brand. I have to be my own brand, right?
I have to be my own brand. I have to market myself and do this. And like the whole involvement, like creating YouTube, everything, TikTok, all of it. I personally could not do it. Like, I am not good. I like having a conversation with you, Chris, and I don't mind that there's a camera there. But if I had to go on and literally build my business by doing this every single day, and truly you have to be diligent about doing it, that would I would say I'm not doing it.
I'm laughing. Have you seen my social lately? My team has said, you have been in the industry a long time. You're one of the most interesting voices in the room. I don't know if I share that opinion, but it's fun to do it, but it's not I've been in this business 20 some odd years, and I didn't feel the need to record my bass while I was at the airport saying that I was heading to a trade show. And now it's happening all the time. But it's also leading to, I started writing for Forbes, Brains. I turned down an opportunity to write for Inc. because I don't have the bandwidth. It absolutely works.
Right. So kudos to you for actually doing it. I'll stick with this.
I'm loving the results, but the work is not in my wheelhouse.
Yeah. Yeah. So to get back to your question though, knowing that, and as they build or grow, what we're seeing really happen is that oftentimes, I mean, there are a lot of med spas, right? There are a lot of practices with med spas, et cetera, that people often think the grass is greener. And so they might even jump, that was my word, jump ship to go to another practice. Or there are many nurses, NPs, PAs out there that get enough experience under their belt, and especially our mid-levels who have the capability of actually opening and running their own practice. That is appealing. And it's a tough pill to swallow, because we as owners, whether I'm a surgeon or whomever, I brought you on, I help train you, I help groom you, we're together in this, growing this, and then you leave me to start your own. It feels very personal and very, it's a big challenge. But again, one more reason that we have to be thinking about how we retain our employees. Like, what are we doing? And I think it's time we have to do some different things and get very creative, because guess what? Ownership is appealing to you, and that's what's calling your name. I'll tell you two things. One is, it's not that easy, by the way. So yeah, if you're listening and you're thinking, I got this, I've got my patience, I can go do this, all those things that I told you in the beginning, like, it's really hard to run a business. There are a lot of things you have to do.
Sure. And I want you to know that I have physically walked up to my old boss and said, hey, I was arrogant and thought I knew how to do better, and I'm sorry, and I appreciate what you taught me, because it is not for the weak.
Yeah. But two, to finish that thought, the second thing that I would tell people is that if you're considering that, what could we be doing as owners to perhaps offer you some sort of either profit sharing or equity? And I do think that to really hang on to those really advanced providers that are helping build the business, like, we should be thinking about that. So it's just about getting more creative as well.
Sure. Yeah. So time for my third question. How do you ensure that the strategies you implement align with each practice's unique goals or vision?
Yeah, every practice is unique. And I would say there is no one size fits all answer. From a consulting perspective, we spend a lot of time to really get to know our clients and what their true vision is. And we do often start with, what's your timeline? What's your exit strategy look like? What's the end look like? And so that we can work backwards to build that pathway for you and that roadmap. But like the industry itself, like medical aesthetics, oh my gosh, the whole reason I'm in it and will never leave it is because it's constantly evolving. There's always new devices, new technology, new products, and things changing. And I love that. Businesses,
fun, right?
Yeah, it's so fun. Businesses also evolve. And when businesses are evolving and changing, it means your priorities have to change. And so as we work with clients, our priorities then shift as well along with them. So we feel very strongly that while we have sort of a baseline, here are the things that we need to be tracking from a financial or KPI status. We're going to do that on a monthly basis and a regular basis, but we're going to keep you in line so that we always know, have our finger on that pulse. But we might shift priorities. And if the priority is staffing, or we're going to do a build out and we need to look for a new location, and what are our costs and how do we do that? Or maybe we need to hunker down on marketing because we're not doing a great job there, or maybe we need to revisit our compensation plans and our benefits package. So we ebb and flow constantly. And I think overall, both as a business owner, but also as we consult with practices, we have to be willing to try things and potentially fail, or at least skin our knees, right? And say, okay, well, that didn't quite work the way we wanted it to. So we need to regroup and recalibrate, and let's do it a different way. And it's all about flexibility.
I'm glad that you said that, because that is also the largest hurdle for me as a marketing consultant. Obviously, I own an agency, so we sell products per se, but I need to consult. And the true nature of marketing, I always say marketing is testing. And if you're not testing, you probably shouldn't do it. So most practices call and they say, how much is this going to cost? And I say, well, it's going to cost this for this, but we should be testing. It should be an investment. And if you're not measuring, we shouldn't do it at all. So that is the essence, I think, of a success. I'm a business owner. I have to edit, adjust, and test all the time. It's hard to teach somebody that who's trying to figure out how to build their aesthetic practice when they want hard and fast numbers. Really, we should be looking at growth for as the KPI, right? Growth is the KPI. Judy, I really appreciate you being on the show. I knew that I was going to enjoy this, but I didn't realize that I was going to enjoy it this much. I had an absolute great time. And while you were talking, I was thinking of people already that I want to send this episode to, because they're things that I've been talking to them about. So I think it's really, really great. This is the point in the show where we ask for your Ailm Essential Insight. And so the Ailm Essential Insight is just one takeaway, sort of your fortune cookie stamp on the episode. What's one thing you would leave our listeners with that they might be able to go back to their practice with, apply, and make things a little easier,
Well, you know what I'm going to say, probably, right? It's focus on your team. Take care of your people. Take care of your people. Be transparent about your goals so that everyone feels like they're in the know and part of the overall vision. And lastly, I'd say celebrate the wins. Celebrate your wins every day.
Absolutely perfect. It's a great way to end the show. I really appreciate you being on. I know that you're super busy, and it even took us a little while to get this scheduled. So I'm not that's not lost on me that you made the time to do this, and I really appreciate you for that. Thank you.
Well, I sincerely appreciate being invited, Chris, and it was an honor to be with you today.
Thank you.